Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let's discuss Trump's visit to the Middle East. So I read the Wall Street Journal today. I had the chance to read it. And as I've read it, I thought to myself, this is a cartoon. This is an absolute circus. On multiple levels. Like, it's theater. Alright, let's go into it. So this is The Guardian. Now, understand, Donald Trump went to Saudi Arabia. Right now, he's in Israel. There was pictures of him dancing and everything else with the royalty in Saudi Arabia. In Israel, he's essentially being bellicose towards Iran. In fact, he was doing the same thing when he was in Saudi Arabia. Essentially wagging his finger saying, Iran, you're not going to be able to dick around with all this terrorism anymore. And you're not going to create a bomb. Now, the amazing part of this is, he's in Saudi Arabia. Like, if you were in Sweden, okay. If you were in Denmark, maybe. But you're in Saudi Arabia. And you're in Israel. And you're talking about terrorism. And you're pointing the finger at somebody else and saying, you need to stop your terrorism. And these good people that I'm standing beside, they're perfectly okay. That's an amazing thing to do. That is breathtaking irony. There's breathtaking irony. Now, I'm going to read this story. Yeah, let's read the story first. We can go through it this way, because there's context on a few fronts with this. Donald Trump, on his first presidential visit to Israel and the West Bank, has escalated his war of words against Iran, demanding that Tehran immediately stop its financial and military support for terrorists and militias, reiterating that it must never be permitted to possess nuclear weapons. Trump referred to Iran issue repeatedly on Monday, expanding on his speech to Saudi Arabia the day before, in which he blamed Iran's rising ambitions for violently destabilizing the Middle East. The United States and Israel can declare with one voice that Iran must never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. Never. Ever. And must cease its deadly funding, training, and equipping of terrorists and militias. And it must cease immediately, Trump said in a meeting in Jerusalem with the Israeli president, Rivlin. I may be pronouncing it wrong. This is amazing to me. Like, I guess the part that amazes me, and maybe I shouldn't be amazed by it, there's no pushback. So, Hillary Clinton, there's a WikiLeaks thing. And again, I'm making this point that he was in Saudi Arabia. He was dancing around in Saudi Arabia with royalty. And again, still being bellicose towards Iran, while in Saudi Arabia, saying that Iran is dealing with terrorists. He jumps across a little bit to Israel. And again, he's making his point, even though he's standing beside Israel, saying that these guys are funding terrorists. This is amazing to me. In WikiLeaks, Hillary Clinton was having a conversation with Podesta. And in this conversation with Podesta, it was an email, she makes this point that she wants to put pressure on Qatar and Saudi Arabia to stop them from sending terrorists throughout the region. That's a curious thing for Hillary Clinton to say. Why would Hillary Clinton say that Saudi Arabia and Qatar had something to do with terrorists in the region? Is it possible because they have something to do with terrorists in the region? Is that possible? Yes, I think that's possible. Hey, look, you can say whatever you want about Hillary Clinton. She wasn't stupid. She just made bad choices. There's a difference in those things. She has an ideology at work about, changing global events of sorts. But that has nothing to do with her understanding what's taking place. I'm making this point that there's a difference between making bad decisions with the data you get based upon some kind of ideological bias versus just having the information. Yes, she's right. I trust her on this point. that Saudi Arabia is shipping terrorism throughout the region, Wahhabi religion. If I know that, certainly Trump knows that. He has to know that. Maybe he doesn't know it. Somebody around him has to know that. They have to know that. Which means that he's lying. He's lying. Now, for his Trump supporters, part of the reason you said you voted for him was because he wasn't going to get into a world war, meaning he wasn't going to involve the United States in military issues abroad. He's dealing with a terrorist state, literally a terrorist state. And while he's in a terrorist state, a state that exports terrorism throughout the globe, he's talking about another state being a terrorist. That's amazing. That is breathtaking irony. That's breathtaking irony. And then he goes to Israel. I would make the argument, another terrorist state. Look, you can be mad at me for saying it, and I'm going to add a certain layer of distinction here. But look, they're taking those people's land. Point blank, they're taking those people's land. However you want to coax it, however you want to make that change. They're taking those people's land. There is land that doesn't belong to them that they are taking using their military, not to mention suppressing that particular region. It's an open-air ghetto. That's the way I see it. It's open-air ghetto. So is he staying beside one terrorist state that is essentially exporting terrorism throughout the Middle East? He's staying beside another state that essentially is running an apartheid regime. And in both of these places, he's pointing to some other state saying, you need to stop your bad behavior throughout the world. This is amazing. This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. Now, let's make a distinction between state versus the country. Now, that's an important distinction. That is an extremely important distinction. George Bush, when he was in office, had like a 30% approval rating. There was a distinction between the government and the country to which they're governing. The guy in France, I think he had like a 10-12% approval rating. Iran, the state that they're calling a terrorist regime, just elected the moderate president. He just elected the moderate president. And in electing the moderate president, overwhelmingly electing the moderate president. The reason I'm making this point is the guy was running against a hardliner, a right-winger in that particular country. There's a difference between those things. The country itself is essentially saying, no, this right-winger he's a problem. He's a problem. That's not the guy who we want to represent us. Meaning the country itself is being very clear in the perspective it wants to give to the rest of the world. Now, you can say they're exporting terrorism or whatever you want. Ultimately, the country itself is giving a clear picture on the image of Iran they want to project. I would make the case that that's the image of Iran. What is this goblin of an image that's showing for the United States? And who is the one who's being hostile when he's jumping from country to country? Look, certainly the news knows this. Like, this is the maddening part about this. He can go out, he can say this, and there's no pushback. Or there's barely any pushback. So it's like, nobody says, well, wait a minute, you're standing with a terrorist regime. That doesn't come up. That doesn't come up. Or it comes up few and far between. Now, the wild part about this is, the Washington Post had an article about this. Actually, first, let me do this part first. Context. Each state, and again, I'm making a distinction between state versus the people of that particular state. I've been to Israel. The people are amazing. The people are amazing. I greatly dislike their government. So, I'm making a distinction between that point. Also, I'm going to make the distinction with Iran. I don't know what Iran is doing in regards to putting out terrorism around the world. They may or may not be. What I do know is the United States is putting out terrorism in the world. For one thing, they're trying to undermine the Syrian government. That is taking place. When Tulsi Gabbard came back and said, hey, can we stop funding terrorist governments or terrorists in those particular regions of the world to undermine the Syrian government? So the United States is also a terrorist exporter around the world, talking to other terrorist exporters around the world about another country that may or may not be a terrorist exporter around the world. These are our events. These are our politics. These are the things that these countries do in the shadows. And the sad part about it, it's not even in the shadows. They don't even do that well. All of these guys are doing this stuff. So it's like, am I really going to get up in arms about it? I guess if you're grossly nationalistic and immensely biased, yes, you can look out at the world and say, hey, those guys are doing something that I don't like. And no, I'm not paying attention to what my government is doing when my government is doing the same thing. You can do that. That would be dishonest, but you can do that. The reality of it is, all of these guys are probably out here doing the same goddamn thing. That's the truth of the matter. There are no angels. All of these are devils. That's what it boils down to. If you're asking me, all of these guys are doing the same thing. All of them. All of these countries jockey for a particular position. It's not one of those things where you have countries who are just not necessarily playing part of this game. These countries are playing in this game space. For whatever reason, all of them want to get... Look, any game that you're playing, the person wants to get a better position. All of them are jockeying for position. It's how they function. It's just a certain level of... There's a grossness that goes along with the way they do it, if that makes sense. Like, there's a level of hypocrisy that's always a part of the process. It's not even a hidden hypocrisy. It's like over-the-top hypocrisy. This country goes out, this country does something. This country says that the other country is doing something that they themselves did. It's like, dude, come on, man. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. Now, the Washington Post. The Washington Post came out with... It's an odd article. It's a hard article only in a sense. Look, people have been decrying Donald Trump's visit. They've been like, how dare this guy go to Saudi Arabia and deal with these people in this way? But let's be honest. Trump's visit is the honest face of it all. It's honest. I mean, Washington Post can have whatever feelings they want to about the visit. The United States is thick and thin with Saudi Arabia. The United States has been thick and thin with Saudi Arabia since they made the deal for that oil for protection. So, regardless of the things that the United States might have said in the past, ultimately, they still stood by Saudi Arabia. It didn't matter. Even when Obama was like, whoa, you guys are killing a lot of civilians in Yemen. Yes, we're also helping you kill some of those civilians, but it seems like you're just killing a lot of them. He still assisted Saudi Arabia in that position. It didn't change. Trump comes in and says, hey, I'm going to be very close with you. I'm going to dance with you. I'm even going to play in your sword ceremonies. Yes, I know you cut people's heads off. I'm still going to play in your sword ceremonies. That's honest. That's all I'm getting at. Yes, you may dislike what Trump is doing over there in Saudi Arabia. But what Trump is doing is the honest face of the United States policy with regard to Saudi Arabia. I have no issue with it. I don't like it in the sense of I don't like the way the United States functions with Saudi Arabia. But between the lie and the honesty, I prefer the honesty. Give me the flaming head. Like I said, this is the Ghost Rider. Rips the mask off. This is what I am. Yes, this is what the United States is. Yeah, they are dealing with terrorist states. Yes, they are thick and thin with terrorist states. Yes, they're pointing at other states that they don't particularly like because their terrorist state that they're affiliated with dislikes them. This is global politics that you're looking at. It's not so much that the United States has any standards. This idea of freedom and justice, stuff doesn't matter. Ultimately, these guys have alliances. These guys stick by their alliances. In this particular case, Saudi Arabia alliance deals with oil. Well, the United States wants oil. They need oil. Well, they're buddies with people who have oil. And they're going to protect Saudi Arabia. And they're going to look out for Saudi Arabia's interests. In this case, Saudi Arabia doesn't like Iran. That's the global politics. That's what's going on. That's why this functions in this way. You were wondering, why is Trump such a hypocrite in this regard? He's a hypocrite because he's dealing with somebody who's also a terrorist state. That's what you're missing. These things are alliances. Yes, you have shitty alliances, but those are still your alliances. You stand by your alliance. And the problem is, you can't say your alliance is a terrorist state. You can't say it. By virtue of you not being able to say it, you are a hypocrite. Global politics. It's just the way it is. Just the way it is. But again, I prefer between the two. I prefer the honest face. I prefer an honest face. Obama can get up and say whatever he wants about Saudi Arabia. He's never doing anything against Saudi Arabia. That means he's lying. If he's saying anything but, yes, I'm going to stick by these guys through thick and thin, then he's lying. Donald Trump comes in, he's going to stick by him thick and thin. He's shamelessly dealing with all of the events that's taking place. They brought him in, he's dancing and all that good stuff. He's playing with a sword. That's great. That's the honest face. I'll take it. I'll take it. Look, my feeling is, it's your country. You should know what your country is doing. You should know what your country stands for. Have at it. There you are. He's dancing with terrorists. That's awesome. He's dealing with another state, Israel. In this particular case, an apartheid state. Thick as thieves is screaming about a peace solution. I have no idea what that peace solution is. I do know he's standing with Benjamin Netanyahu, who's not looking for a peace solution. These are global politics. It's global politics. It's not pretty. It is god-awful and disgusting. And yes, these guys are massive hypocrites. And yes, these guys are also doing the exact same thing that they're blaming other people for doing. So, this is Donald Trump's trip to the Middle East. That's great. That's great. What I would say is, look out for provocations with Iran. That's what I would say. From the early part that Trump has taken this office, they've looked towards Iran. And they fomented this thing with Iran. Essentially pointing aim at him, saying, you guys are terrorists, you guys are trying to build a nuclear bomb, this deal has been horrible, this deal was the worst deal in the history. And look, to be fair to Trump, Hillary Clinton also, and well, it wasn't Hillary Clinton, but in the Podesta leaks, there was this mention of this deal was some level of appeasement, and Podesta saying, yep, at the end of it. Now, you can make a case that Hillary Clinton was a hawk. So, yes, you may feel that way, internally. Who knows? Whether it's true or not, who knows? All I'm getting at is, for the guy who came in under this thing of, we're not going to go seeking wars overseas, it looks like he's seeking wars overseas. That's all I'm saying. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon.